You are listening to KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank, your partner in possible.
Welcome into Ain't No Seats, folks. We're here to talk about Kansas beating a top 5 team in the country. But AB, have you heard of our title sponsor, Emprise Bank, before?
The very one, yeah. Did you know you can open an account with Emprise Bank in like 5 minutes now? It's crazy. Savings just start there. Emprise is a trusted partner with a variety of products and services to help you achieve your goals. Don't be tethered to a brick building. Start a meaningful relationship with a bank that has your best in mind. Shouts to Emprise Bank, been with us since the start. So yeah, go work with them for all your financial needs. Let's talk some Kansas basketball hoops though.
That's right. Obviously, we're going to touch on the Texas game a ton. I don't know how much we'll talk about Iowa State. Obviously, that was a stinker up in Ames, the old Hilton Magic. But Texas last night, obviously, huge win for KU. They would have been out of the Big 12 race. I think they would have had to win out probably, or maybe lose one more to even share. And we know how good Bill Self has been against top 5 teams in Allen Fieldhouse. He's 10-1 now against top 5 teams in the Fieldhouse, and he's 36-0 on Big Monday at Allen Fieldhouse, which is one of the craziest stats ever. It shows you how good of a coach he is, but it also shows you how good he is at getting his guys ready to go, getting them prepared, good game plans and things like that. So Bill Self, undoubtedly the best coach in the country.
Yeah, I mean, they're not putting KU versus bottom team in the Big 12 on Big Monday usually. Those are usually like prolific matchups. So 36-0 in games at Allen on Big Monday is pretty insane. Is it 10-1, 11-1, whatever it is against top 5 teams? That's just a stupid stat. Like I can't comprehend.
Like you think most.
That's just at Allen though, right?
Yeah.
I mean, even though that's
ESPN had a graphic that said 11-1. Our guy Adam Sullivan went and did research. He said 10-1. So I think it's 10-1. But you would think 11 games, like even 7-4 would be insane, or 6-5 against the top 5, like one of the best teams in the country. Obviously, you're playing a top 5 teams, so shows you how good Allen Fieldhouse is. Shows you how good Bill Self is, obviously. So last night was wild.
My only loss.
No, I was gonna ask you that. I didn't know it. I was gonna go try to look back and see, and I can't even think of who it might be.
So I haven't fact-checked this, but I'm like 99% sure in my mind. I think it was early January 2020 year when we lost to Baylor on that like Saturday morning.
That might be it.
Smoked.
Yeah, that was
awesome.
One of the few games KU lost that year. Dot left in the first half with an injury.
They lose again the rest of the year.
That was when Masio Teague was hitting threes and throwing up the cell phone. But last night was wild. Obviously, because Jalen's been so good this year. He's averaging 22 going into, I think, 22-8 or 22-9, which is stupid. And it's so funny because I don't know about you, but I'm a big like football reference guy and basketball reference guy on the old internet, where I get on, look at numbers, stuff like that. And I was just going through Jay Will's game logs, and his season low was 11. And so he was at, let's see here, 23 games to open the year in double figures. And his season low was 11 against Indiana, which is another good team they beat at the Fieldhouse. Shout out Bill Self again. But I was sitting there just thinking, I was like, Jay Will's going to score in double figures every game. Like he's going to have to, first off. And he's obviously an elite scorer. I was like, I don't think he'll score less than that all year. And if he does, we're in trouble. I said that literally yesterday before the game. Jay Will scores 2 points last night. Didn't get in any rhythm. He was in foul trouble at some points of the night. He scores 2 points against the top 5 team in the country, where Jay Will had been just carrying us. Even in the losses, he kept us in it. He had 38 in Manhattan, where we ended up losing. He had 30 against TCU, where we got blown out. 23 against Baylor, another loss in Waco. And then he had 26 at Iowa State Saturday, and KU scored 53. He pretty much had half the points. So literally 2 days before this game, Jay Will scores 26 in Ames, and we score 53, and everyone's melting down. And then last night, he scores 2 points, and KU has probably 6 guys that step up. And so I tweeted it. I was going to ask you, if we got on the pod after the Iowa State game, which we would have been, our fans were melting down, we would have been a little down on this team. If I would have said, hey, 2 nights from now, or whenever we recorded, Jay Will's going to have 2 points against a top 5 Texas team who has 2 losses in this monster of a conference. What are the percentages Kansas wins this game?
I would have given it like 1%. I tweeted about it too. I seriously would have predicted a 30, 40 point win for Texas. I mean, it's all you have been asking the same question.
If I said over under 61 points. Jayhawks
way under.
How many points do we score?
Way under. I mean, and I know it's in Ames. It was a Saturday morning, but like 53 points in a conference game, 60 hours before last night's game tipped off? Like, that big of a turnaround. It's just crazy to me. But I don't know. It felt like a completely different team. They shoot. They probably shot more, but they only made 2 threes.
Yeah,
I think
both. Grady hit both.
Grady hit them both.
One was pretty late, which it was getting a little tight there. He hit one. We got 2 offensive rebounds.
Yeah.
And Grady hit one from the corner, which was huge. The game was getting tight, getting a little nervous. Because like I said, you lose that game, you're 3 back in the league, and you still have a bunch of tough games left. Like even we'll talk about the next 2, but they're at both Oklahoma schools. You're 3 back from Texas. You still got to go to Texas. Like the odds of even sharing it at that point are slim. And we probably would have been, I don't know, the fans obviously would have melted down. There probably would have been, it would have affected seed line too. I know KU's, we'll talk about bracketology in a little bit, but if KU loses last night, what do you think what line does Lenardi have them on?
I want to say he had in his little note that he tweets out every day that if KU had lost, they would have dropped down to the 3.
3? That's not bad.
But yeah, I think they're pretty locked into a top 3 seed at this point, as long as they don't just completely collapse. I mean, what do they have? I know last week they had 2 more quad 1 wins than anybody else in the country.
Yeah, I guess
they got another one last night, but I don't know if anyone else caught up. So they're either 2 or 3 up in quad 1 wins. Like they're going to be a good seed in March. Do we want to talk seeding now, or do you have more?
I know KU fans would have melted because the Big 12 race obviously means a ton to us. Like just the history, they have so many conference titles, the 14 straight Big 12 titles, and everyone obviously wants to win it extra this year just because, for one, the league is insane. There's so many good teams, so winning it would say a ton. And then just losing another game at Allen would have been tough. But the thing that impressed me was that they pretty much controlled the whole game. I thought in the first half they could have been up more. They were up 10, could have got a shot near the end of the half. KJ turns it over. They come down. Marcus Carr hits a 3. They get it to 7. I was feeling a little nervous because Jay Will just didn't look right now last night. And I don't know if he was worn down a little bit. He'd been I just read off his numbers. The dude had been scoring 30 points a night.
Truly a historic run from him.
So yeah, I think we would have seen a little meltdown because I mean we went on the 3-game losing streak and then they found a way to beat K-State and Kentucky, and then we go to Ames and just looked terrible. So I don't even really want to talk about that game. Bill Self didn't even seem worried, and last night just again shows you how good Bill Self is at getting his guys up and ready. Like he wasn't nervous, and I can't even imagine what he was saying, how many times he called them soft and how they needed other guys to step up. And that's exactly what happened last night. Like Grady was so good. Grady played, I don't know how much you really paid attention to this, but Grady played with a little like swagger and cockiness. He was talking a little shit, and he was as good as he's been in weeks, I think, personally. He had 21, he was 7 for 11, hit both threes. So I thought Grady was great from all 3 levels from an energy standpoint. So
I thought he was pretty good on defense too. Like that, and that's obviously not his strength. And someone from The Athletic put out an article with an anonymous quote saying that he can't guard whatsoever, which to be fair, he's like our 5th defensive option. But
maybe that was the article.
There's a play I remember. Yeah, well, because
last night personal.
But no, there was a play toward the end of the game where he was and whoever drove on him, he just stuck with him the whole way, knocked the ball out at the end, and I think it led to an easy transition bucket. It might have been the same play that Juan had that sick pass to Joe, who we'll talk about because Jesus,
we got to talk about both of those guys.
Finished it off, but yeah, Joe made me laugh a lot last night, and it was hard for me to watch because every shot he took, I was like, Joe, what are you doing? Slow down a little bit. But he kept making every one he took, so it's I didn't know how to react to him. It was nice to see someone off the bench actually come in and make a significant impact on the game, because I feel like we've been lacking that for all season, really.
It was so funny because it was one of those things I wanted to tweet about, but I didn't know if anyone else noticed. And then our boy Rye obviously isn't on the pod tonight, but he was tweeting about it, and I looked at his tweets after the game and was dying laughing because I wanted to tweet about that. And there was one where I think he made a layup and then came down and he dribbled himself the entire possession. No one else touched it, and he pulled up from 17 or 18 feet, and my eyes immediately go to Bill Self, and his hands were on his head, and I'm sure he was all red-faced like he gets, and I don't know if he yanked Joe right away, but he probably didn't because Joe was so good last night. But he was so funny, and the confidence was obviously incredible. We've been saying that we need guys off the bench, and even last week after they beat K-State, I don't know if it was K-State or Kentucky, but we talked about Joe and Ernest Uday specifically. Those two, we need a backup big to be solid coming in for KJ if he gets in foul trouble, if he's not playing well, and we need a guy that can score, a spark, because we were talking about him or Bobby, and Bobby's great. We think he's going to be so good. Bill thinks he's going to be so good. He's a stud, but we need a guy that can come in and be an elite scorer, instant offense, and Joe can do that. He proved that at Drake. This whole offseason, that's all I heard was that Joe was just filling it up, scoring. So we needed that performance from those guys, and that's going to be huge for them going forward. Joe had 14. He was 5 of 9, 4 for 4 from the line. He had 5 boards and was just an incredible spark off the bench for KU. And then Uday, I think that was exactly what he did against K-State. I was reading off his stat line then. He played like 10 minutes, came in, didn't miss a shot, got boards. Last night, 8 minutes, 3 for 3, 6 points, and played with a ton of energy. So I wanted to hear your thoughts on the bench last night and just what we need from the bench going forward.
Yeah, Ernie, and I'm going to sound stupid here because...
Like you're on the Ernie train.
Yeah, need it. I can't remember exactly the stretch that it was, but there was a stretch, I think, late in the first half where it was like 90 seconds, 2 minutes. He was the best player on the floor. Like, he had a block shot, went down, had a dunk, and then had like a hustle rebound or something, like back to back to back. And it was sick to see. And on that note, and on like while we're talking about the bench, one of the most successful lineups we had last night, somehow, some way, was it DeJuan, Joe, Grady, McCullough, and Uday?
I think so, yeah. I remember them being out there for a good span, a good chunk of time during a huge stretch of the game where the game got tight, and they were all fine. DeJuan didn't make any mistakes. Joe took some crazy shots, but he got that pass from DeJuan, which was insane. We'll talk about that, and he dunked that. It's crazy how he leaped there. Joe, and then the crowd went crazy. That crowd was elite last night. You could just hear it on TV. It's one of those games I wish I was at. But yeah, Joe, I love listening. Like, even if I'm watching at home, I'll try to turn on the radio or go in my car and listen to Bill talk after a big win or a terrible loss, because the terrible loss is the shitty about them being soft and not guarding. It's so funny, but when they win a game, it's hilarious how like complimentary he can be. So like all day I've just been thinking about what he was probably saying, and it was probably a bunch about Joe and Ernest, and obviously about Grady, DeJuan, and Jay Will not scoring at all. So I've been like trying to do impersonations all day, obviously, and I guarantee he was like, well, Jay Will didn't score it, but we didn't need Jay Will to score it. And then Ernest and then Joe was terrific off the bench. I thought they were great. I thought Joe played with a ton of energy, and then Grady was as good as anybody. Grady made a ton of shots. Grady finally guarded somebody a little bit, and then DeJuan's as good as any point guard in the country, even when he's not scoring. But when he's scoring, he's better than anybody. So we love DeJuan. And I just kept thinking about what he was saying, because think about it. I bet for months he's just been waiting on a performance from these guys to step up outside of Jay Will. Like Jay Will, man, feels like there's been so much riding on him this year. In Manhattan, he scores 38, doesn't get the ball late. They end up losing, which you score 38 and you lose. That has to piss you off. So I bet Bill's been waiting for a performance, especially from some of the starters. Like Kevin's had some tough goes at it. DeJuan's had some tough nights. Grady's had some tough nights. He's a freshman, so you expect that. But especially from the bench, like the starters, yeah. But the bench, he's been waiting on bench production all year. He's been rotating guys in. Like Zuby will play. Cam Martin came in for a few minutes. Clements will come in. He's tried Bobby. He's tried MJ, who was solid last night too. But he's been waiting on good performances from the bench for a while.
Yeah, it's about time it showed up, because we've harped on it before. It's been all Jalen for, most of the year, but especially the last month or so. But it did, like, and I tweeted about this too. It was very refreshing to watch. Like, it gave me a lot of confidence going forward that this wasn't going to be a second round loss, and look back and we think of this team as like, yeah, they were whatever. Like, it was more of like a national championship hangover. It's fine. But like last night, just seeing it all happen, all the guys contribute, it kind of re-triggered, like, fuck it, let's go back to the Final Four again. Let's go win another natty. Like, I don't think that's off the table, and college basketball seems wide open. So, yeah, it's, like we've said a million times, Nothing but positives to take from last night. There is one thing though. Can we like have an intervention with Grady and McCullough specifically? They commit the dumbest fouls you'll ever see sometimes. I mean, it really is frustrating to me. Like McCullough at the end of the game, you're up 8-9 points. Why are you going in to tackle a guy from his side while he's shooting a 3? Like they had a 4-point play and the McCullough fouled another guy on a 3 like 2 minutes later in the final 5 minutes of the game. Obviously it didn't have an impact on the game last night. But holy shit, man, this isn't a one-time thing with these guys committing fouls. That it's just like, just think about it for a second. Like if they're going to score regardless. Don't give them a little tap. Let them shoot that guarded 3. Don't dive into them. Like just chill out a little bit.
I got a few funny things on that because first off, shout out DraftKings, but I took under 155 at half, and then like a minute in, I took under 156, and then I look later, and it slowed down a ton at one point. It was at like 145, and so or close to 150 or something. So I was looking good. They scored like 50 points in the last 8 minutes. So yeah, that span there. I know you've watched games with me where I gamble on them. I was melting down. They fouled on 2 threes. It ended up being like 168, 88, 80, which is crazy. They scored 88. Jay Will had 2. That's bizarre.
Yeah.
And then with Kevin McCullough, I love him. He plays hard. He's a winner, but that in his mind, he has never fouled anyone in his career. It's the funniest thing I've ever seen in my life. And I'm not even harping on Kevin. But every time he fouls, he's like, he pulls the LeBron, like, except like, he doesn't run after the refs like LeBron after foul calls, but he's never fouled in his career. But yeah, Grady, that was kind of a weird call, I thought, on Marcus Carr late, where he got the and one layup. He went on right hand on the left side. Jay Billis said he like arm barred him on the back, but it didn't really look. It felt like one of those fouls where refs call late because the team's losing. But I don't know. Yeah, those fouls were tough. I don't know why they're fouling 3-point shooters. I bet once again Bill was red faced, but
he looked livid.
I love when he gets fired up, starts punching the scores table and stuff. But yeah, we definitely gotta talk about, we haven't even talked about our guy DeJuan. He was so good last night, and obviously there's teams that will sag off him. That was also in the Athletic, that teams will sag off. The guy in the Athletic said you don't need to sag off fully. Like, he obviously can hurt you a little bit deep. And DeJuan, some of those times I feel like he just pulls threes because he's wide open. And I don't know if you agree with this, but it felt like DeJuan, from a confidence standpoint last night, was at an all-time high. And lately he's been pulling, he's been shooting around the rim. He made a crazy tough layup with the left, reverse layup. But he was so good last night. And I was looking at his box score. He took 16 shots last night. I think he was 8 of 16. And I think 2 games ago, he took 12 shots. He hadn't taken more than 12 shots since the season opener this year. And so if I would have, before the year, if you told me DeJuan was going to take 16 shots in a game, I'd probably say, which I hate saying this, I'd probably say we'd lose, but I'd also think you were insane.
Yeah, that's actually stunning to hear. I didn't see that many shots. But yeah, he was great. I mean, everywhere. Offense, defense, transition, passing. I mean, it was just felt like a master class of a DeJuan that we've seen many times. Maybe not as consistent as we'd like. Had a tough little month there, but
he did.
I mean, shit. If he's playing, and obviously every time he plays well, I think we say the same thing. Like, we're not going to get that from him every single game, but if he can do like 75% of that, we're going to be in good shape. Just don't have the game where you go 0 for 7 and you have 1 point and 3 fouls, 4 turnovers. Like,
yeah.
He was just perfect. The pass he made to Joe, you mentioned it earlier, was like, it blew me back. I was just sitting there kind of on the edge of my seat, and it just threw me all the way back as far as I could go. Like, it doesn't make sense, some of the things he can do with the basketball. And he just makes it look like so routine. And it's like that cute kid when you're growing up and he's like, he does something cool in his Little League baseball game and he's trying not to smile. And everyone's like celebrating around him and he just like breaks it. That was DeJuan last night.
Yeah.
Like, after, he's just, I don't know. I love the kid so much.
Yeah, he's great. And I was saying that earlier, is our fans are so tough on him when we lose. Like, they're like, DeJuan can't score. But then when he wins and he has like 4 points, everyone's like, oh, DeJuan's the best in the country. Right. So when he doesn't score and we lose, they're mad. But when we win and he doesn't score, they're pumped and think he's the best. And he's so good defensively and he gets everyone involved and he controls the game as a point guard standpoint. But last night, 8 for 16 from the floor, 50%. He had 17 points, 6 rebounds, 5 assists, and then 4 steals. And it looked like he was in his bag. Defensively, kind of reminded me of the UNC game where he ripped RJ Davis from behind. But he was kind of getting in guys' faces and showing a little emotion, which he doesn't do at all. But he was so good last night. And Bill Self's so good at developing point guards, but also keeping faith in his PGs and keeping them level-headed and keeping them going. Like DeJuan had we talked about it, 2 for 18 over a 4-game stretch. He had 5 points in 4 games. And not only that, but he was turning it over, making bad decisions. He had 1 or 2 questionable turnovers last night, but Bill Self and his point guards, it blows my mind, man. Like DeJuan, the way he's progressing, even as a scorer, he's not an elite scorer yet, but shit, could he be not elite? But I could see him being a good scorer next year, averaging double figures, getting to the rim.
The team in scoring his senior year. I mean, if I told you that about Frank Mason in his sophomore year, like no one would have thought that he was going to win Naismith Player of the Year.
Yeah. So we go from him, we go from Frank, Devontae. Devon was so good. I feel like people just forget about Devon because he wasn't around for a while. We didn't win a ton in the tournament, which got screwed by COVID in 2020. Just thinking about the point guards since Bill's gotten here and how they all progress. Tyshawn even, everyone called him Tyshawn turnover. Tyshawn still talks about that, about when they came back from Maui against Duke. But the way he can just develop point guards, it's as good as anyone. The way he can develop bigs is crazy. Just the way he can develop, it's best in the country. But DeJuan was so good, 8 for 16. And then obviously we talked about Joe and Ernest. I think KJ, his performance last night is kind of being slept on. Just looked at the box score. I had no idea, but he had 7 offensive boards, which Texas's length and their athleticism was something we were all worried about. We thought it would be a tough matchup. So how about your boy, KJ Adams, with 7 offensive boards last night?
It's just great to see. I think, did he have a couple of them late right before that Grady 3?
I think we had 2 on that possession. I think he had 1.
Mm-hmm. That's just a crazy number, though. I mean, that's 7 free possessions from one guy.
Yeah.
If you want to put it that way. So,
yeah,
I don't know. He's going to be slept on forever, but he's been so good for us this year that I don't really have much more to say about him. Like,
yeah.
And he's my guy. He's going to be our guy the rest of the year unless if he's not going forward like the primary big, that's probably a good thing because it means Zude has like gone nuts in his progression, but like it's going to be KJ. We know how self-coach.
For sure, KJ. And I don't see Ernie going nuts, and we don't need him to go nuts. Mm-hmm. We need him to be, like I said earlier, you come in off the bench, give KJ a breather, play hard, rebound, don't foul, set screens, finish dunks, make layups. That's all we need from him. And that's what he's done from the last week since the K-State game. He was pretty solid even in Lexington when Zuby left the game with an injury. And I think Ernest has taken advantage of that with Zuby leaving. Feel bad for Zuby, but Ernest has been solid. And I think KU fans kind of get in the habit where you get a 5-star recruit, he comes in, he's not playing well, and everyone starts questioning it. They start looking at his ranking out of high school. They start wondering why he's not playing well. And you just got to, like, in Bill Self's system, these guys wait their turn. They learn the system. They come in, play well. That's what KJ's doing right now. That's what DeJuan's doing right now. So you can't expect Ernest to play 20-plus minutes and come in and get double-digit boards, score 10-plus points. So we can't expect a ton out of Ernest. If he does what he's done the last few weeks, we'll be just fine. Even if Joe does that too. Joe and Ernie, and then our starting 5. That's really all we need right now. Bill, we talk about it. He gets his rotation down to 7. So I'm pumped about that 7 right now. And it's one of the most bipolar KU teams I've seen in a while. Because I can't figure them out. Like you're worried at K-State, they obviously had a chance to win, but you got Jay Will has 38. No one else really stepped up at all. So you worry after that game, and then you come home against TCU, you get blown out of a TCU team, one of the best teams in the country. Jay Will goes off, and everyone's starting to worry about the team. And then they find a way to beat K-State, Kentucky. Everyone's back all in. And then you go to Ames and play one of the worst games of the year. You turn the ball over a ton. You score 53 points. And then 2 days later, your guy, who's one of the best scorers in the country, he's averaging 22 a night. He has 2 points, and he beat a top 5 team in the country that's loaded with talent. And you control the game. You should have won by double digits. They put up 88 points. And so
Texas never had a lead.
Yeah. And so now I think I'm all the way back in because you found a way to win that game. You give a ton of players confidence. DeJuan, McCullough, we didn't talk about him. He had 16 points, which 10 of them came from the line, but he had 6 assists. He's been rebounding it really well. And then Joe and Ernest should have all the confidence in the world, which might make Bill nervous about Joe having that much confidence because he's going to start pulling from 20, 25 feet. But I think that was such a massive game for them, for the coaching staff, obviously, to step back. And I'm sure they have confidence in the guys, but step back and realize that they can win games without Jay Will putting up 20, 25 points a night and from a fan base standpoint. So I think I'm all the way back in right now.
Yeah, I would agree. Like I said earlier, it was just good to see. You want to take a quick break and then hop into some like next steps for KU and bracketology shit?
Absolutely.
Hell yeah. All right, we'll be right back, folks.
All the way back in. Still, Jay Will's not going to have a night like that again, which is another thing that's exciting. A guy that's averaging 22 a night. I've said it 100 times, scored 2, and they beat a top 5 team in the country. But yeah, let's get into, I want to talk about the Big 12 race a little bit, and then we get into bracketology. I was just going over the race, obviously last night, and I just looked at it today. Obviously,
about to get goofy.
Yeah. Texas wins that game last night. They're at 9-2. KU would have been at 6-5, which I kept looking, obviously on the scoreboard on the bottom of ESPN, you see the ranking, you see the record. Mm-hmm. We're sitting at 6-4, and I'm like, dude, if we lose and we're 6-5 in the league, like fans are going to melt down first off. But I don't know, have we ever seen KU be anywhere near 6-5 in the Big 12 race, like close to 500, 11 games into the league race?
Maybe the first year we did this. I can look at it really quick, but
with Diedrich and
yeah, because we were out early.
But yeah, well, Texas.
I mean, I can do the math. Yeah, if you want to fill it, I'll do the math and see if it ever got that bad.
Yeah, if Texas wins that game, they're 3 games up on us. We would have had to go to Texas at some point. We obviously have the tough games at the Oklahoma schools. We still got to play Baylor at home, so we would have been 3 games back. It would have been tough to share Texas. I don't think we could have caught Texas, honestly. Because we would have had to go to Texas. I don't know if we win that game. That's going to be a tough environment. But yeah, just looking at the Big 12 race, Texas 8-3 at the top of the league. Iowa State, they're 7-3, so they haven't played as many games as Texas. They're at Westvaw tomorrow, which will be a tough one. It's always tough in Morgantown. And then
if you let Westvaw win that game, and it's like 5 or 6 teams within 1 game of the lead in the Big 12, halfway through like that. That's fascinating to me. It's going to be a crazy end of the year.
I was also thinking about this. We've talked about this on the show many times, but this feels like the time of the year where we're really locked into these Big 12 games where we're cheering against certain teams. Like it felt like a week or 2 ago, I didn't even really care because it just plays itself out and everyone's got to play a gauntlet and they got to play so many more teams. But like tomorrow feels like a game that I'll be locked in, cheering for West Virginia. Obviously, I don't know. I'm not saying Iowa State's going to win the league, but they're obviously up there near the top. They still got to go to K-State and Texas. So they got to go to Manhattan and Austin. KU's at 7-4. And then you got TCU, K-State, Baylor, all at 6-4. Looking at Baylor's schedule, they have an absolute gauntlet. It's insane. I don't know if you've looked at it. They got to go to TCU. They got KU at home on the final day of the season. They're at K-State. They got Texas at home. They're at Oklahoma State, which they're not amazing, but it's weird. That's always tough at Gallagher-Iba. And then they have Iowa State at home. K-State has TCU, ISU, Baylor at home. And then TCU's at K-State, Baylor, KU, Texas at home. So everyone has to play a gauntlet, and I'm just sitting here thinking about last game of the regular season, KU at Texas, like just thinking about the Big 12 that entire day. I'm not sure who all plays, but so many stakes are going to be on the line for that game, for shares, for maybe outright. And it's going to be a tough one at Texas in Austin when we already beat them. So that's going to have huge implications that final day of the year.
Yeah, and it might come down to that because I'm just looking at KU's schedule right now. They've got a real chance to go and get hot really quick. Like, they got Oklahoma State both on the road. Those are never easy, but they're certainly winnable games compared to what we've just gone through. Like, it is weird to look at these 2 games as quote-unquote a break, but based on what we've played in the last month, it kind of does feel like a little bit of a break. So if they can get out of those 2 with 2 wins, they get Baylor at home. You'd like to think they're going to win at Allen. They go to TCU.
They're already losing to Baylor.
Yeah, and Bill Self
and
doesn't really get swept ever. He's gotten swept like twice. I mean, it doesn't really ever happen. So gotta think that they have the advantage in those two, and then it's Westbot at home, Texas Tech at home at Texas. So like, before that Texas game,
those are the two you
cannot.
You can't lose.
No, well, okay.
You can't lose those 2 home games.
What's Westbot ranked in Ken Palm? Do you know off the top of your head?
They were 19 last I looked.
14.
Shut up.
It's insane to me, man. I don't know why he loves them so much. I haven't been super impressed by them. They're 3-7 in conference or something crazy. But for whatever reasons, the computers love them. It blew me back. Like they're higher than, they're basically tied with Baylor. They're higher than TCU. They're higher than Iowa State. They're higher than K-State. Like it just doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me. But
they were 19 to. Have they been winning lately? Because they were 19 last week. Yeah, 3-7 in the league. 3-7 in the Big 12, and they're a top 14 team in the country on Ken Palm.
They started 0-5 in the Big 12, 1-6. They've won 3 out of 4, but it's been against Tech, home against Auburn, lost at TCU, and then beat Oklahoma at home by 30 points. So I guess that's impressive. But it's not like they've been beating K-State, Baylor, KU. Like they're just, beating teams they should probably beat.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up the schedule because I was going to get into that next. Obviously, we've talked about the 2 games at the Oklahoma schools. I think there's been years where we lose at OU. I remember Frank's junior year, the Buddy Hield beat us there once. I believe Trey Young beat us there. I remember the game where they were hacking Doak. We actually beat Buddy that year with Devontae where he went off.
Yeah.
We swept them somehow.
Enjoyable KU basketball games to watch.
But so it's always tough there in OSU for some reason. It's always tough, no matter how good we are. 08, they beat us. Frank's 2017, they blew us out somehow. In Frank's year, Bill got teed up. It's always tough there. So I was thinking, honestly, I want to win. Like, you hope to win both, but I feel like it's like those spread. Like, I personally think that Oklahoma State spread, for example, could be like a pick'em or or we're favored by 1 or so just because it's on the road. They almost beat us at home. They scored 45 points in the first half against us, and we luckily won that game. So I could see that being a tight spread.
You're dead on. I mean, Ken Palm's got us -2 at OU, and then he's got Oklahoma State favored by a point against us.
Okay, yeah.
I don't think that's going to be the.
Well, they're going to be tight.
It's going to be more like KU -3.5 and KU -2, but
like no question, one of those games is going to be tight. We're not going to win both comfortably, and we could lose both. Honestly, they're on the road, Big 12. The OSU, I don't know where OSU and OU are NCAA tournament-wise, but obviously KU's coming to town. They're going to get everyone's best shot, best crowd. So winning both would be massive because those aren't easy games. Like even Bill said, there's no bottom dwellers in the Big 12. Every game's going to be tough, especially on the road. So if they could win both of those, I'm feeling sky high. I think you split one of them, and then you got to beat Baylor at Allen. You can't lose any more at Allen. And so I think even 2-2 after these 4 would be decent, solid. We still have a chance. We'd be at what? We're 7-4 in the league. We'd be at 9-6 with 3 to go. 2-2 would probably be tough.
I don't.
3-1 would be massive. I don't know where Mike Miles is at from an injury standpoint. We're looking
not playing tonight.
Okay, we're looking pretty far ahead. Obviously, we're going to need Texas to lose. They got at Baylor at TCU. They'll lose one of those.
Yeah.
But we're looking ahead a lot. But 3-1 after this 4-game stretch would be incredible. I think 2-0 in those at the Oklahoma schools, and you're coming home against Baylor. We're in great shape to at least share the league.
It sounds like we're kind of on a different page here. Well, not with like what you just said, but do you? And maybe this is just me not being. Yeah, the Chiefs are still going on, so my mind is kind of like split between KU and the Chiefs. But like, are you that into winning the Big 12 this year? Because like I was having this conversation.
I think I'm just talking to the fans almost.
Right.
To the fan standpoint.
And we were talking the other day, and Alan, I think, asked who we were cheering for, K-State or Texas. And they all said K-State because Texas would be like alone in first place and this and that. And it's like I don't know. I don't really care about that. Like one way or another, we're going to be a 1, 2, or 3 seed unless we just collapse. And I looked at the numbers. I think it was 23 times that KU's won a conference championship since I've been born. So it's not like it doesn't mean a whole lot to me anymore now that the streak's over. And I know that sounds super spoiled
And then,
And I don't want to come off that way, but it's more like focusing my attention. When we lost Saturday to Iowa State, my first thought wasn't, well, shit, how are we going to get back in the Big 12 title race? It was more like looking at the team itself, like, okay, well, they have a lot of places they need to improve if they want to have any success in March. I think I'm just more like looking towards that as long as we're set up for the tournament well. And obviously winning the conference sets you up for the tournament just naturally because, you're going to get a 1 seed if you win it. But it's not as devastating for me to lose games anymore because you still see Lenardi and Palm. They don't drop them below the 2 line. So it's, I don't know. To me, it's just like I'm not as into it. And maybe that happened when the streak died, but
just getting older. Like when you're at the school or you're in high school, like you take so much pride in it, and every loss affects you. And your Mizzou, K-State fans are texting you every time you lose. Like that shit affects you. And social media, they're talking shit and it affects you because KU. Like being a spoiled fan or being a prick kind of, but we don't lose many regular season games. So when we do lose, our fan base melts down, but other fans give us shit. So I guess it's just like taking pride. But yeah, if we go 12-6 in the league and Texas goes 13-5 and they win the league and we're still a 2 seed, and obviously you go 12-6 to finish the Big 12. To finish, if you finish 12-6 in the Big 12, obviously you only lose 2 more, so you're going to beat a couple good teams the rest of the way, and you're going to have some confidence going into the Big 12 tournament, going into March. As long as they're peaking going into March, they're 12-6 and they lose the Big 12 race by a game or so. Honestly, who cares? Like, yeah, you want to win the league because it's such a good league. It's an 18-game span where you have Allen Fieldhouse for 9 of them, and so you feel like you have a great chance, but they finish 12-6 or even 11-7, which I think can be possible. You lose 3 more with 7 to go. It's possible, but I think we should all, obviously, we're all focused on the tournament. You want to win the Big 12, but with our body of work, we've beat like teams like even Indiana and NC State have been low-key underrated wins for us. NC State looks great. They're electric. That was a nice win in Bahamas that felt like they controlled. They beat a Kentucky team. They beat a Duke team. So we have a lot of under-the-radar Mizzou. We have a lot of under-the-radar good wins. We're going to have a nice body of work going into the tournament. We have the best coach in the country, so we'll be ready to rock in March. Worst case, we're probably a 3 seed at this point. Yeah,
and then I guess we can maybe transition into bracket talk.
Oh, I know.
I ask this question every day.
I looked at bracketology before this and immediately thought of you. I don't know if you've looked today.
At Lenardi's?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a cakewalk, the Elite Eight.
Well, have you seen where we are?
Des Moines and KC.
Yeah. 2 in the Midwest.
But that's what I was going to ask. Like, we're all on board with 2 in the Midwest over 1 in, like, New York City, right? Like, it's...
Yeah.
To me, that just feels, like, obvious. So I don't want to get too... And that's the other thing, too. Like,
also, who would get the
better chance?
Who would they give the... Like, say... Obviously, they kind of put the 1 seeds in certain places to, like, where they are demographically. I know sometimes it hasn't worked out our way. Shout out 2007. But who would they put in the Midwest? Like, say we were on the 1 line, who would they put over us in the Midwest? Houston?
Houston, yeah. At Purdue, I think they're giving Purdue the South if they're number 1 overall because Louisville is pretty close to, I can't think of where Purdue is right now. West Lafayette. That's not too far of a drive for them.
It is.
Yeah. But, so it's Louisville, New York City, Kansas City, and Vegas, I think, or LA, 1 of the 2. I think Vegas. But yeah, we'd have to hop Houston because I don't think they're going to ship Houston unless they put Houston in like Vegas or something. But then we'd have to hop Arizona.
Yeah.
Like, I would much rather be comfortable at home, never have to go more than 3.5 hours away from campus until the Final Four, and then just trust that more than we got a 1 seed and we have a slightly easier road, which I don't really believe in. I kind of feel like I'd rather be a 2 in terms of seeding because I think. I don't know.
And obviously, like, just from a fan standpoint, like, everyone's going to want a 1 seed. It just obviously looks great. The 1 seed in the region, it adds to Bill Self's resume, but being a 2, there's obviously nothing wrong with being a 2. We were 2 in 2012. A lot of 2 seeds lost that year. Tucker. But yeah, being a 2, obviously in Kansas City, which we'd have to win 2 games to get there. We've done this before, 2017. We don't even need to talk about that year. And then we got our hopes up in 2019 when we got in the Midwest. But you obviously want to be in Kansas City. Our fans are going to travel everywhere, but Kansas City is obviously a different animal. The crowd would be full of crimson and blue. You want to be there. Iowa, our fans will be packed there. So you obviously want to be in the Midwest regardless. Like I said, our fans, you're going to be a 1. Everyone wants to be a 1. You're supposed to get a better draw. Maybe. I don't know if it works like that. But if you're the last 4 seed, you might get a tough draw. Last year we got a nice draw. We knew it right away. But
we think that though, but it's like last year, the other half of the bracket was a 10 and 11 in the Sweet 16, and we had to play the 4. And we all knew Providence wasn't the greatest 4 seed in the history of college basketball. But like shit just goes haywire that it's almost, to me, seedings matter in the first round, maybe the second round. But who knows what's going to happen? I mean, K-State went to Elite 8 because they didn't have to play a 1 seed when they were a 9 seed. Like, shit just happens, goes haywire, you never know.
And I was also going to ask this, is obviously there's some teams ahead of us, but the winner of the Big 12, like, if whoever wins the Big 12 outright, are they not going to get a 1? Is it not going to work like that? Because they could lose a couple more. They could lose a couple more, obviously, and they're going to lose a couple more. Texas will lose 1 or 2 more. And so teams are going to be losing games, and I guess that affects your resume a little bit, maybe not against a ranked team, but if a team's losing a couple more games and then Arizona or whoever, Houston, Purdue separates themselves, could they still be a 1 over the outright winner of the Big 12?
I feel like Ryan has kind of been harping that whoever wins the Big 12 should get a 1 seed. He might have even said 1 overall, and I don't really disagree, but
a team at the bottom of the league is a top 15 team, according to the metrics. West Virginia is the 14th best team on KenPom.
Absolutely.
They're 3-7 in this league, and they could be 3-8 after tomorrow night, and they'll still be a top 20 team on KenPom.
Speaking of KenPom, I was looking last night. There's like 2 or 3 teams total that fit the top 20 in both offense and defense. And I don't trust any of them. It's Houston. I don't really trust. It's Alabama. Sure, I guess.
Yeah.
And it's UConn. I have zero faith in UConn. So
I think so too.
And it just feels like we say this every single year, but it does feel like really wide open at the top for college basketball.
It is.
Teams that are at the top right now are not teams that you would normally think is college basketball national champions. So
I feel like usually by this point, I at least have my own opinion on who I think the best team in the country is, at least the most well-rounded team that I can trust, especially guard play. I love It's all about guard play in March, like guards that can go, guards that can score. And I usually have a team that I at least feel is the best team in the country. Last year, I think we all thought Gonzaga. Obviously, they were the number 1 seed. But I have no clue where I'm at right now. I think they can be really good. Sometimes they can stink. Alabama, they go to Norman and get stomped. UConn was really good there for a while. Houston, like you said, they're so good defensively, so well coached. Marcus Sasser's an elite guard, but outside of him, they don't have really elite scorers besides him. So I don't know where I'm at with best team in the country, and I think it's wide open. And I think last night should show KU fans they can obviously beat anyone, and everyone should be all in again.
You want one more break, and we can chop it up about the Chiefs a little bit?
Let's do it.
All right, there's a big game this weekend. All right, we'll come back and we'll talk about that and wrap up.
I guess this is the time where our KU listeners that don't like the Chiefs, I guess you can leave unless you want to hear Super Bowl talk. It's a pretty big game they do every year on Sundays, I think, and the Chiefs have been in it 3 of the last 4 years. We're obviously super excited, anxious. The Bengals week took forever. It was the longest week ever. I think this week's going to rival it. You know me with sports. I don't like to get my hopes up, so I'm not getting too confident in the Chiefs. I'm all over the place with this matchup because I think both offenses are elite, 1 and 2 scoring offenses in the league. Eagles defense, and they've rolled in the playoffs. Obviously, Daniel Jones goes to Philly, and they haven't played a good QB yet in the playoffs. I know Brock Purdy had been solid. He gets hurt. Josh Johnson comes in. So Philly's been rolling. They're a really good team. I want to give them credit, but they haven't faced elite QB play. They haven't even faced great QB play, and they're facing the best quarterback in the world on Sunday, one of the best play callers in the world. So I think it'll be a tough test for Philly, obviously a tough test for us, but I wanted to see where you're at for a whole. What am I trying to say there? Where you're at for this game?
I don't even know. I've been so back and forth. Like with the Bengals game, I just had like a confidence that they were going to find a way to win. This week, I wouldn't be surprised with any result. I can see both teams winning by 20. I could see a close game that goes down to the final minute. Either team wins. Like, it's a fascinating matchup.
Yeah.
The way the Eagles run the ball and, the up front, both Eagles and Chiefs, it's just going to be fun to watch, man. I can never get enough of the Super Bowl. I think we could go every year for 20 years and I would never get tired of it. But
no, there's no way you could.
It's just a lot. It's hard for me to comprehend if the Chiefs do win, what Pat has accomplished in 5 years' time.
By age 27.
Yeah. 2 MVPs, 2 Super Bowls, probably 2 Super Bowl MVPs if they win.
Quarterback wins MVP when they win the Super Bowl. That happened he was fine against San Francisco. Obviously, they were trailing. The loss place saved them, but I thought Damian Williams had a good case to be MVP. But, yeah, you look at odds. Obviously, Jalen Hurts and Pat are probably both plus 120 or so to win MVP because the QB always wins it. You could see like a defensive play late. But, yeah, if Pat wins or if the Chiefs win, you're looking at 2 Super Bowls, 2 league MVPs, 2 Super Bowl MVPs by the age of 27. And the Chiefs are going to be even better next year. These rookies that are playing a ton are going to be in their second years. They're going to be improving. Veach has 12 draft picks to work with. He could create a ton of cap space this offseason. So it's kind of scary to think about the future if they win. And obviously I kind of get nervous just because Jalen's a younger QB. They talked about him. He was obviously in the MVP race. He's probably going to finish second. So I would hate seeing a younger QB get one and have the same amount as Pat. And we all want Pat to be, he is the best in the league. Everyone knows that, but I don't even want anyone to be in the conversation.
Kind of like with Bill Self right now. Like, it's nice to know that
he got the second.
I can't really argue against it. I'm looking at it right now, like.
And Pat would double up every QB in the league. He'd be at 2. Mm-hmm. He'd be at 2 rings. Obviously, Lamar, Joe, Josh Allen. Who else am I missing? Herbert. None of those guys have one. And Pat would be at 2. Burrow had his chance last year and this year. But yeah, Pat would be at 2 and be doubling up every QB in the league, and he's at age 27.
All those quarterbacks you just mentioned, they won combined Super Bowl appearance. That's pretty fun. Chris Jones is 40-1 to win Super Bowl MVP. That's the only one I think I would touch if it isn't Pat, it isn't Jalen. Like, I think it's, you brought it up earlier, but I looked at it this morning. Damian Williams, 107 yards rushing, a rushing touchdown, 29 receiving yards, and a receiving touchdown. The receiving touchdown put us up by 4 with 2 minutes left, 3 minutes left, whatever it was. And the rushing touchdown completely ended the game. Mm-hmm. And if that wasn't enough, when Pat threw 2 picks himself, if that wasn't enough to take MVP from Pat, I just have a hard time thinking that another offensive player is going to do it. But Chris Jones is like swallowing up the run game and making it impossible, and he gets a couple sacks, and the Chiefs win like 24-16 or something like that. Mm-hmm. Lower scoring game. I mean, 40-1 feels like it's worth a sprinkle for that kind of stuff.
That's what I was going to say. I don't think there'd be an issue with throwing a little flyer, $5-10 on him to win 200 or 400. But yeah, like last year, I think Aaron Donald in that Bengals Rams Super Bowl, Aaron Donald made a case to win it. Cooper Kupp obviously had the game-winning touchdown catch, but I think Donald, he made a case, and Chris Jones has taken over as the best D tackle in the league. And Philly, obviously, their offensive line, they're so good in the trenches. Jason Kelsey's so good. Lane Johnson, Landon Dickerson. So if he had a big performance against a really good offensive line and changed the game and made it really tough on Jalen, he got the no sacks monkey off his back last week. So I think he could just dominate, which he does. He's dominated in a ton of playoff, even the San Francisco game, batted a ton of passes down. Jimmy G made it tough on Jimmy G. So he changed that game in the fourth quarter, and I can see it. I mean, maybe Pat plays average, or he throws a touchdown or so and throws for 200 yards, and Chris has a game-sealing strip sack or has like 3 or 4 sacks. I think he could make a case for sure. And Chris Jones, I think that's another thing too, is like if he wasn't a league-wide name, I think if it was like a random player, they might not win it, but everyone knows Chris Jones, and he's one of the best D tackles in the league. So I think if someone like that has a huge game, he could potentially win MVP.
Do you think he would have won MVP if last week was the Super Bowl?
Yeah, I think.
Mahomes still put up 325 and 2 touchdowns.
Yeah. So that's another thing too, is Pat's the face of the league,
right?
And he was on a bum ankle. He puts up that performance, the touchdown to MVS. He sealed it on his feet. So it would be tough not to give it to Pat because everyone's talking about that being a legendary performance. Obviously, he scrambled for the first down on the hurt ankles. So I don't, probably not last week. Pat still would have got it. But if he had a like decent to below average performance, which he could, I mean, Philly's D line's so good. Four guys with double digit sacks. They got Slay and Bradbury. And the secondary, their secondary's been one of the best in the league. So he could have an average night, and Chris Jones could take over. But yeah, I'm ready to see what the Chiefs offense can do against this D-line because we're good in the trenches too. Our O-line's one of the best in the league. We talked about that before we started the pod. You got Creed, Trey Smith, obviously Tooney, Orlando Brown. We need him and Wiley to be really good on Sunday. And then I talked about the secondary. They're solid, but they haven't seen an offense like Kansas City's, and they haven't seen an offense even close. Maybe Dallas.
People keep saying in the playoffs, but like the best quarterback they played this year, I think it was Rodgers, Goff, and Lawrence, and they all put up like 30-plus points. And then the Dak game on Christmas Eve.
Yeah, like I think Kellen Moore's a solid play caller. They got rid of his ass. So he's with the Chargers now, but they have
kind of terrifying.
Tony Pollard, CD, so they have some weapons, but like we do too. So I don't see, obviously, Philly's D is fine. They're really good. I think they could slow KC down a little bit, but what is really slowing the Chiefs down? I think the Chiefs could obviously, they can score 30 plus. Pat could throw for 300 plus. Like that's just a normal day for the Chiefs. And I think the Eagles, they obviously could slow them down a little bit, but I think the Chiefs are still going to be able to do what they want. Andy with a week off, we've seen it for years. He's one of the best ever with a week off. And I think that the thing that people aren't talking about enough is the coaching matchup. Nick Sirianni obviously is solid. He got them to the Super Bowl. But Andy Reid's been here. He's obviously 1-2 in the Super Bowl, but it feels like a one they need to get, a guy that used to work under Andy Reid. Pat going against a quarterback that's playing in his first Super Bowl. So it feels like that we have the experience factor. I know the Eagles have been there too, but at the biggest position in sports, we have the advantage there. I don't know. I think we're just as good in the trenches too. I think Philly has weapons, Devonta Smith, AJ Brown, but we saw a receiving core that was better last week with T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, with L'Jarius Sneed out. Our rookie corner stepped up. Justin Reed stepping up. Our D-line has been as good as it's been. So I'm sky high in confidence just with the Chiefs roster as a whole. And I think this is a game Andy and Pat need to win. Andy would be 1-3 in Super Bowls. Pat would be 1-2. The things they would say about Pat in the offseason would be annoying, which I said that about Cincy game too. He found a way. I just think Pat will be too much. I think our offense will be able to do enough. And their defense is good, but I don't think they'll be able to slow us down enough.
Yeah, I think my gut tells me to take the Chiefs, but I genuinely don't know, man. I'm just ready for it to be here. It's only Tuesday, and we're already getting takes out of Philly saying if Jalen Hurts wins, that what's the argument to take Pat Mahomes over Jalen Hurts if you're starting a franchise? So that was good to see this morning.
And I think we can play the no one believes in us card again because I really do. We're dogs, first off, and it feels like, maybe I'm wrong, but it feels like a lot of people are picking against us again. I think everyone just thinks Philly is the most well-rounded, all-around team in the league, which is fine. I think people should have that opinion for sure, and it could be true, but I don't think you should bet against the best quarterback in the world, one of the best QBs ever. And I wouldn't doubt them again. And I think they could play that card again. Tom did it all the time with the Patriots. No one believes in us stuff just to get them motivated. So I think they could play that card again. I think they definitely played that card against Cincy. Pat had some comments after the game where he said, like, this isn't even a real number, but he said, 5% of people picked against us to win?
Yeah. Or
picked us to win. So they played that card last week for sure. And they had all the shit talking from the Bengals. So there's not a ton of bulletin board material, but I don't know if I'm right or wrong, but it does feel like a ton of people are picking against them again.
Yeah, I mean, they're underdogs. How many times are you going to be able to see Mahomes as an underdog?
In the Super Bowl against a quarterback that we haven't talked about, has an issue with the throwing shoulder, and he's been errant with throws. He's been all over the place. So I think Spags can bring disguised blitzes with Sneed, Willie Gay, stuff like that. I think they can make it tough on Jalen. But, dude, it's your first appearance in the Super Bowl. Like, I know Jalen's played in big games. He was at Bama, Oklahoma. He just played an NFC title game. But, dude, those lights are obviously bright. I almost said those brights are light.
Sure.
But, dude, that's a tough – obviously, Pat struggled to start the game against San Francisco. He threw a pick to Fred Warner. He threw one behind Tyreek Hill in his first Super Bowl. So I think that first Super Bowl appearance could be nerve-wracking for Jalen. His shoulder, dude, he doesn't look good throwing it. We talked about it before the pod. He threw for like 150 last week, which he didn't even really need to throw it, but most of his yards went to Devonta Smith early in that game, which he didn't catch the ball. So I think it could be tough on Jalen Hurts on Sunday. And if the Chiefs stop the run at all, I think we roll. Like, their rushing attack's crazy. It's one of the best in the league. I think their offensive line creates so many holes for them. Miles Sanders, Jalen's been running it well this year, obviously, but he hasn't been effective lately. So I think if we're able to we don't even need to completely stop the run game, just limit it a little bit. That rushing attack's crazy. If we can limit the rushing attack for Philly, make Jalen uncomfortable and make some tough throws to A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith. I know they could maybe use those guys around the line of scrimmage to help him a little bit, but I think if we can limit the rushing attack, make him make throws and beat you with his arm, I think the Chiefs have a really good chance.
Yeah, stop the run, put pressure on them. I think they got to be bringing pressure all night. Just trust your corners one-on-one, maybe one safety over the top, and really slow down the run, make Jalen beat you with his arm, because sounds like you're in the same boat as me. I don't really trust – if the Chiefs can stop the run, like, I don't think there's a formula for the Eagles to win the game.
I agree, and I'm nervous. I'm already anxious, losing sleep for the game Sunday. I want Pat to get a second ring. I want all of them to win, but obviously want Pat to get a second, Andy to get a second, another parade in KC. Fun episode with you, talking KU, beating a top 5 team. We're all the way back in again. We'll see if we're all the way back in after the 2 games at the Oklahoma schools. The Kansas City Chiefs playing the Super Bowl Sunday for the 3rd time in 4 years. Should be the last 4 years, maybe the last 5 years, but let's not take it for granted. Enjoy every second, because how hard is it to get there? You got to win minimum of 2 games, sometimes 3 games if you play in wild card weekend. Obviously, the AFC title game is really tough to win. We've seen that before. We've given up leads, so it's so tough to get there. And I think Chiefs fans have gotten spoiled at some points. They melt down over regular season losses. We melted down after being up 27-0 against the Broncos, and they made it a game. Season was over at that point. But yeah, dude, this is incredible. Like, we'll never see this again. Obviously, Mahomes has a ton of time left, but after the Mahomes era, we'll never see anything close to this again.
No. One more thing before we get off. A big shout out to our guy Reinhardt, huh?
Yeah, I was going to open the show with that.
Yeah. So he's not on tonight. He had to work, but yeah, seriously, shouts to Ryan and Hannah. Yeah. Engaged couple, newly engaged.
Yeah, it's amazing. We love him, obviously. Love Hannah. So, dude, that's so awesome. And I had no clue it was coming. And then he texted us randomly because we wanted to watch the game. Hey, I'm proposing Saturday. So, God, that's so awesome. And we love him. Miss him on the show tonight, but we'll be back soon. I guess show him some love on social media if you want. But shout out to our brother, Rye, for getting engaged, getting on one knee and
pulled it off perfect.
Yeah, he's the man. We love him. Shout out to the Hawks. Hopefully the Chiefs win another ring Sunday, and rock chalk.
Thanks for watching this production of KC Sports Network, the fastest growing sports media network in Kansas City. Check out these videos that feature our team of more than 15 former players, insiders, and analysts, bringing you the best Chiefs coverage you can find. Entertain, educate, inform. KC Sports Network.